Hey there folks, it's Brian with Foxfire Armory, and today we got a lot of stuff to cover here, and basically what I'm going to be doing is going over where I believe things are kind of headed in the United States here as we move forward through 2022. So first things first, let's get this started with most of this stuff can be found information on the internet. Nothing really special about the information I'm about to present. I'll hopefully put some graphics up here for you guys so you can see kind of where some of this information is coming from and to see basically news sources. Some can be biased, some are not, just to kind of see where some of the information is pulled from for you guys. So moving forward here, as we kind of ease into 2022, I think one of the big things that we're going to end up seeing is kind of a global economic shrink. Now, many people are probably thinking, well, what do you mean? What is a global economic shrink? Well, in short, I have a feeling as we see economies like China ramping up and growing as they have been probably for the past decade, we're going to start to see all of the world economies slowly shrink monetarily, probably in other aspects also, but the global economy and the global currency flow is going to kind of scale down to probably levels that we haven't seen in quite some time. Now, this is speculation based on the way that the market has been trending, the things we're seeing with like the evergreen situation in China with their housing market, the things we're seeing with the supply chains here happening in the United States, the inflation here in the United States, and just kind of all the situations we've been seeing globally as far as stuff that's been happening with the pandemic and the supply chain and cryptocurrencies, the stock markets, kind of just all of that as a bubble leads me to believe that we're going to see a global shrinkage here as far as the world economy is concerned. Now, excuse me, I'm still getting over COVID here, so got a little bit of the shortness of the breath, and it's just something because I'm an idiot and I was working out through having COVID. But part of my 2022 goal is to lose some weight, get a little bit more physically fit. So, hey, I hit it hard anyway. Feeling good though, still got a little bit of the scratchiness in the throat. So from there, we're seeing retailers closing. And don't mind me if I'm looking down here to the left to my notes, just to make sure I'm giving you guys everything that you deserve and everything I want to get out to you guys for this week. So retailers are closing. Now, this is not just big box retailers. This is local small businesses, and certain areas are going to see it faster than others. So for me personally, local areas have seen it to a certain extent, but it's more of the outskirts, smaller towns that are seeing it worse. Prime example would be one of the towns that a lot of the people from Illinois frequent. Many of the small shops there they've closed their doors completely, and they're not planning on re-upping their leases, or they're selling the buildings, or they're just not continuing their business. Actually, a lot of the signs over there said that the owners were retiring, and basically with the shutdowns and all that kind of stuff, they're done. So continue to see that. That's probably what's going to happen more and more here as we get through 2022, unless things really start to kind of get scaled back as far as the restrictions, mandates, that kind of stuff. Obviously, this will be on a state-to-state basis. Things we're seeing in Florida, South Dakota, their economies are doing great. Businesses are popping up all over the place over there. But states like New York, California, Illinois are seeing heavy losses. In fact, I believe New York just saw the largest population decrease that they've seen in over a decade. Illinois, I believe, lost 113,000 and some change residents. Now that is factoring in people moving back to the state and people moving out. They had a net loss of 113,000. So a lot of these states that, for lack of a better term, are Democrat run and are pushing these restrictions, we're going to see those economies starting to slow, starting to basically lose population, decrease. So if you're in one of those areas, that's to be expected. Now, That leads me into the supply chain shortages that we're still seeing to this day. We are seeing bare shelves. In fact, I just did a grocery trip recently and the chicken was completely gone. And when I say completely gone, there was literally no chicken outside of the sparse little bit that they had in the freezer section. But the entire fresh, chicken section gone. Pork almost gone. They had pork ribs, they had some roasts, they had no cutlets, they had no pork loins, they had none of the standard cuts of pork that you would normally see. And then on top of that, the beef, which has scaled down in size, the prices are just astronomical right now. I think I just paid $15 and some change for 3 tiny little ribeye cuts. So I don't expect that to get better anytime soon. The lack of workers in the retail section, and I consider grocery stores to be essentially retail, it's just going to compound the issue. I was there, the milk was basically completely off the shelves, but if you look back in the cooler, they're stacked mile high and they don't have enough people to get them off of the, I guess, whatever shelving that they have back there and onto the shelves for the customers. So I expect that's going to ramp up. That's going to possibly get worse before it gets better. I don't know when it will get better. I really highly doubt it'll be this year. I expect between gas prices rising and worker shortages and all of that combined, the shipping container supply chain issues still happening to this day, this stuff's just going to keep getting worse. And what's going to end up happening, my prediction here for the April timeframe when people get their tax returns back, we're going to see a twofold issue with the shortages and with people getting their, what they like to call government money, which is just money they've paid to the government back. We're going to see people going and essentially panic buying. Now, I pray that people are smart enough not to do that, because all that's going to do is hurt everyone. Don't go out, use your tax return money, and just go on a buying frenzy, stockpiling everything that you think you're going to need for the next few months. The reality is, the stuff's going to keep coming on the shelves. It's going to be slow. Pasta section by me was basically wiped out, but within a week they have the shelves pretty much filled back again. So don't go overboard. Don't do that. That's hoarding. Not a good thing. Don't do it. Panic buying. Not a good thing. Don't do it. Please don't do it. So what you should be doing is buying a little bit here and there as you're moving forward. And for those of you who don't, start canning. Plain and simple. If you have an Instapot, you can do pressure canning. I'm sure a lot of you out there probably had no idea that you could do that, but you can use your Instapot, whatever they're called, whatever brand you got, you can use that for pressure canning. You can also make preserves and jams with just water bath canning. But working towards getting yourself a little bit more self-sufficient and doing your own prepping, not just buying stuff off the shelves at the grocery stores, it's going to be a huge help for you, because not only are you going to know and have this skill now on how to do this stuff, you're helping by buying things that are in large quantities, bulk, like potatoes and carrots and that kind of stuff that seem to be readily available still to this day. You're not going to be taking something off the shelf that someone who either doesn't have the ability to do that or physically can't do that, you won't be taking away from them. So I'm all about community, all about helping each other, and one little thing that I can do to help other people, if it's canning, I'm going to do that. Not to mention, canned stew is phenomenal if you've never done it. So from there, it really seems like things are moving towards a more digital era. And what do I mean by that? I mean, not just we're getting more content served through internet streaming providers, we're, news outlets, independent media, that kind of stuff. The shift of remote working, remote online learning, digital currencies, all that stuff. Basically getting to a point to where I think within the next decade, what we probably will end up seeing if things don't change is you will own nothing and you will be happy. That means the car shortage, which I feel like is very manufactured at this point, you won't own a car. If you need a car, you'll rent a car, right? But most people won't even need a car anymore. You'll do all your grocery shopping online. It'll be delivered to your house. You'll basically do all of your work 100% remote for those that can. Those that can't, it's going to be automated. Just look at what's happening at McDonald's right now. McDonald's is literally automating the entire process. They literally have a robot that will go and flip a burger for you. And they have kiosks that you go and you order your own food. Now, this is going to keep happening. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast with technology. As technology progresses, this is what's going to happen. And this is part of the downfall of humanity, right? We get complacent and we lose all of our skills and the mindset of being self-sufficient. And what happens? People just want handouts at that point. And that's kind of where we're at and where we're headed right now is really people just don't want to work, right? Because why go slave all day for, $2.50 an hour? And maybe if you're lucky, you'll get tips. That's where the restaurant industry has been hit really hard. Now, the caveat to that is if the restaurant wants to pay these people $15 an hour, well, you're not going to get tips anymore. And if you do still get tips with a $15 an hour payment, you, as the owner of that establishment, are going to have to raise the prices so astronomically high for your customers, you're going to lose all your business anyway. Those people are going to be out on the street looking for a new job anyway. So there's really a fine line that you have to kind of toe when it comes to how much are you paying your employees, combined with obviously the inflation in there. If you're making $50,000 a year salary, right now at this point, your salary is only worth maybe $45,000, $45,700, something like that, if you factor in the current rate of inflation. So keep that in mind as you guys are looking to the coming months, looking into the future, planning for you, your family, whomever. So what does that lead me to believe as far as where things are headed and what we can kind of do to stave that off? And I think the reality of the situation is for you and I, there's really nothing we can do. We just got to kind of ride the wave and do what we can do, control what we can control, and leave it at that. A lot of you guys out there, and I'm sure there's many that have watched this channel, subscribed, watched other channels, and there's this prepper fantasy, and I believe other people have talked about this, maybe in the past, if not recently, the idea of the SHTF fantasy, and that is I'm going to grab my bug out bag, I'm going to throw my family in the car, and we're going to bug out to the woods, and we're going to live free of charge as soon as stuff hits the fan. The reality of that situation is 99% of people will not be able to make that happen. Now, if you're in the southern states, possibly we see it in California with all the freeloaders who are homeless and just pissing and crapping all over the streets. They live rent-free, out of tents, whatever. You can do that in the warmer climates. Now, are they going to thrive? Are they going to be able to survive long-term? Is long-term survivability an option out there? Maybe, but if stuff actually hits the fan to where people aren't producing and food is not being produced, the reality is probably not. Those people are not going to be able to go out and hunt or fish and do what they need to do to provide for themselves or a family if they have it. So I really recommend for those of you who are in the preparedness community or are just getting started in the preparedness community to really focus on bugging in. Okay? Now, bug out is great if you are in a city and you have no other option because the cities are going to be just a disaster. If you're in the suburbs and you can do it, you're far enough away from the cities to where you don't have to worry about it. That is, or rural, for example, that's where you really want to focus on the bug in. You want to focus on hardening your home. You want to focus on security measures around the home. And your home is your castle. That's where your stuff is. That's where you're comfortable. And you really need to work on fortifying your home, not only with security measures, but with the necessary equipment that you will need in a long-term grid down scenario or economic collapse scenario, or even just as we're seeing right now, supply chain shortage issues, right? And at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually burned through some of my preps because I just didn't really feel like going to the grocery store. And, with all the coronavirus scare stuff happening initially, it just didn't make sense for me to go out not knowing anything at the time and just keep buying groceries and acne as if nothing was going on, because people were buying stuff that was flying off the shelves, and it was just easier to keep my family in the home and use what we had. Now, obviously, I'm not going to burn through everything I had because, well, that would just be dumb. So, and I have since then replenished majority of that, and I've actually added to my preps from what I had actually taken away from, knowing that these scenarios could continually keep happening here. So take that stuff with a grain of salt, but really focus on bugging in and making sure that you're able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and that you have the necessary equipment. Now, not cheap garbage, fake prepper crap that Amazon sells all the time, but actual good quality equipment like a dual fuel Coleman stove. Prime example of, if you lose gas to your house or electric to your house, you can still prepare, boil water, whatever you need to do to prepare food for your family. So that's going to be the kind of stuff that I'm talking about when I'm talking about prepping for bugging in. And the realistic scenario is, unless you have a homestead that you can go to and someone's been taking care of for you, that has chickens and you can grow crops and you have a working garden that you can go to and just immediately be up and running. The reality of that situation is most people don't have that. Most people aren't going to have that. And you're not going to just go out into the woods, pitch a tent somewhere. I mean, especially for me being in Wisconsin, it gets negatives. I think one year we had negative 30 with the wind chill, negative 40 with the wind chill. There's no way you're going to take your family, go out into the woods and survive through that. It's not going to happen. So remember that when you're prepping. Don't worry about all the tchotchke stuff that you're going to find, all the, oh, check out this awesome survival tool. Really focus on practical prepping. So leave that there. Don't want to harp on that stuff too much, but bug in, practical prepping, get the utilities and the necessary equipment that you would need for a bug in scenario. So that'll kind of lead us into another thing, which is the failing power grids that we've seen a few times. We saw it in Texas last year. We have seen it in California just as early, whatever, as last year. And so I have a feeling the more that these are being stressed and the older that these systems get and the less that they're being maintained, we're very well going to see a scenario play out where here, there, wherever, stuff just starts failing. And it could lead to a chain reaction. I'm not an expert in that area, but it's just things that I've seen, bits and pieces of information of, like the Texas and the winter storms. And that's another thing with the, people like to talk about climate change. Climate change has been happening for tens of thousands of years, and it's going to continue to happen. And one thing that people fail to realize is right now the poles have shifted. So North and South Pole, they are magnetic poles. They've shifted about 1 inch. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking the massive scale of the Earth, a 1 inch shift in those causes dramatic weather pattern changes. And you can go look all this stuff up. It is out there readily available for you to read and learn about. So keep an eye on your local elections, who's running things. Check out, what your power grid is, whether it's running solar, wind power, coal, nuclear. Just kind of get a feel for that, and that'll actually help kind of decide what kind of preps you might need. Because if you're in an area where you suspect your power grid is old, outdated, or the backups for the main power system, you don't think that they can handle the load that they might be under, it's just, it's a good thing to make sure that you have the necessary stuff in case of that situation, which is flashlights, batteries, cooking fuel, that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. These stories pop up randomly here and there, and so that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it as we continue to move into 2022. And we're kind of seeing more of these little things pop up, and stuff like the wildfires, which are knocking out power grids themselves and knocking out power to people's homes. It's just something that we really should touch on here and there. So the last thing I really want to talk about is basically Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, the current state of the US dollar, and the Fed's attack on cryptocurrencies. Now, this leads back to my kind of idea behind everything moving more digital and online. Is Bitcoin it's a speculative currency, right? But as more countries, like I think Bolivia just picked it up, trying to remember, Peru, I believe. There's a few South American countries that have actually now made Bitcoin the official currency of their country, or the essentially the gold standard of what's backing their currency. So it may seem odd because Bitcoin fluctuates, goes up and down, but I mean, so do gold prices. So keep an eye on Fed moving towards creating their own digital currency, because I really feel like that's going to be the push, and that's the reason we don't see the Fed raising interest rates like they should be doing right now. It could just be that they're trying to keep everyone calm. They don't want people to realize that things are a lot worse than they seem. And if you're not in cryptocurrencies, even if you don't want to get into it, I highly recommend at least getting a basic intro learning about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and what cryptocurrencies are. Because if things do start to move more digital currencies are going to be the wave of the future, whether it's a US dollar coin or some other currency that whatever country decides that they're going to make up, whether it's a world currency, which honestly I don't think would be that bad. And I'm not particularly fond of the idea of a one world currency, but if there was a single digital backer for all currencies, that would mean that a US dollar is equal to a euro, that kind of stuff. So that would be kind of nice, to where you can take your dollar here and it's a dollar there and vice versa. But we'll kind of watch that, see how things kind of play out over the next couple of years here. I have a feeling there's definitely going to be a heavy push towards getting rid of the current cryptocurrencies that are there, at least from a government standpoint, and the government pushing towards their own digital currency to make that the new gold standard. So it's really all I had for you guys this week, and really focus on trying to get self-sufficient if you're not. That's the last piece of advice I'm going to throw out there for you for this week is start small. Start a garden, whether that's some potatoes, carrots, whatever else, even if it's just an herb garden. Start getting those principles down and learning some of the basics and the fundamentals of growing a garden. Maybe learn how to can. Go buy some strawberries from the grocery store and make your own preserve. You know, it's a good starter course right there, is to make yourself some strawberry jam or grape jelly, whatever you fancy. So that's all I got for you guys this week. Until next time, it's Brian with Foxfire Army. Catch you later.